For 500,000 years, Earth had remained silent. No signals, no transmissions, no signs of life. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity was nothing more than a ghost, an ancient race that had once dominated the stars but then vanished without a trace. No one knew why or how. There had been no war, no great cataclysm recorded in any galactic database. One day the humans were simply gone. Theories spread across the galactic union. Some believed they had destroyed themselves in their endless conflicts. Others thought they had ascended to a higher plane of existence, leaving behind their primitive physical forms. A few whispered that they had never truly disappeared, but were merely waiting. For centuries, Earth was avoided. The last known ships that approached had disappeared without explanation, leaving only fragmented distress signals that spoke of warnings, shadows moving in space, and overwhelming fear. But the galaxy was curious, and curiosity often led to recklessness. Now Captain Tsar and his crew stood at the edge of Earth's orbit, staring at the planet that had been a place of legends and nightmares alike. "Looks dead," one of the officers muttered, adjusting the view on the holographic display. Earth still looked much the same as the ancient archives depicted, a blue and green marble floating in the void. The clouds swirled lazily across the surface, and vast oceans gleamed under the distant sun. There were no visible cities, no space stations, no signs of an empire that had once sent its fleets across the galaxy. "This doesn't feel right," Captain Tsar said, his claws tapping against the metal railing of his command deck. He had fought humans once. Long ago, before their disappearance, the Xyla had clashed with them in border skirmishes. Humanity had been terrifying, not just because of their technology, but because of their will. Even when outnumbered, they fought like demons, relentless and cunning. And then they were gone. Now he was back, but this time as an explorer. "Run a full planetary scan," Tsar ordered. His science officer, a multi-limbed creature from the Vrask species, tapped at the glowing control panel. The ship's sensors reached out toward Earth, scanning for energy signatures, life forms, anything unusual. The results came back instantly. "Sir, I don't understand this." The Vrask's voice trembled slightly. "We're detecting something. Strong energy readings, advanced technology." Tsar frowned. "That's impossible. Humans have been gone for 500,000 years." "That's what I thought. But the readings suggest there's still an active defense grid surrounding the planet." A silence fell over the bridge. The crew exchanged nervous glances. "Maybe it's malfunctioning," another officer suggested. "Old remnants of their civilization. Could just be automatic systems left running." Tsar wasn't convinced. "Move us closer." The fleet inched forward, drawing nearer to the supposedly dead planet. The closer they got, the clearer the readings became. There were massive structures hidden in orbit, almost invisible, as if cloaked. Ancient satellites, still functional, defense platforms with weapons primed and ready, and then the alarms began to blare. "Captain, we're being targeted!" Tsar whipped around. "What?" Before he could issue a command, golden beams of energy lanced out from the darkness of space. The Xyla fleet barely had time to react as the first blasts struck their shields, sending tremors through the ships. The sheer power behind the attacks was staggering. Tsar's instincts kicked in. "Evasive maneuvers! Pull back!" The fleet scrambled, breaking formation and retreating to a safer distance. The mysterious weapons did not pursue them but remained locked onto their location. "It was a warning, sir," the science officer whispered, horror creeping into his voice. "Those weapons, They're human. Tsar's mind raced. This didn't make sense. The humans were extinct. Their empire had crumbled. And yet their defenses were still here, still waiting, still guarding a planet that should have been abandoned. And that begged the most important question of all. If the humans were truly gone, who was still defending their world? The Xyla fleet hovered at the edge of Earth's orbit, stunned by what had just happened. The planet they had assumed was dead had just opened fire on them, not recklessly, not randomly, but with precision. Whoever was controlling those weapons had intentionally aimed to disable, not destroy. It was a calculated warning. Captain Tsar steadied himself. His claws dug into the armrests of his command chair. His crew was shaken, their eyes flickering between their captain and the glowing holographic display that still showed the energy signatures around Earth. "Status report," he barked. One of the officers, still trembling from the shock, read the data. "Shields are holding. We took minimal damage, but—" "Captain, those were directed energy weapons, far beyond anything we've ever seen." Tsar narrowed his eyes. "Are we sure it's human technology?" The science officer hesitated before responding. "Yes. The energy signatures match the old Terran archives." He swallowed hard. "Sir, this shouldn't be possible. No civilization in history has maintained working technology for 500,000 years without maintenance." Tsar's mind raced. What they were witnessing defied logic. Even the most powerful empires of the galaxy crumbled within a few thousand years. Technology eroded, structures decayed, and systems eventually failed. But Earth's defenses had remained, operational for an unimaginable stretch of time, and that raised a terrifying possibility. "What if this isn't just automated?" Tsar muttered, half to himself. "What if someone, or something, is still down there?" A long silence filled the bridge. Finally one of his officers spoke. "Orders, sir." Tsar exhaled sharply. "We didn't come all this way just to turn back. We need to know what's happening on that planet." He turned to the science officer. "Deploy probes, full spectrum analysis. I want scans of the surface, the orbit, and the underground." The officer hesitated. "Captain, if the defenses are still active, they might destroy anything we send." Tsar's expression hardened. "Then let's see just how smart they are. Send 3 decoys first. If they take the bait, we'll know they're operating on pre-programmed patterns. If not, then we'll have bigger problems." The crew followed his orders. Moments later, 3 small, unmanned probes shot toward Earth. The fleet watched, in tense silence, and then, just as expected, the hidden weapons activated. Golden beams of energy erupted from unseen platforms, slicing through the probes like paper. But there was something eerie about the attack. It wasn't just mindless destruction. The weapons fired in a precise pattern, eliminating the probes in an almost deliberate sequence. Tsar's blood ran cold. That was not random automation. That was intelligence. But before he could order a retreat, the alarms blared again. "Captain, we're picking up movement on the planet's surface." Tsar's head snapped toward the screen. "What kind of movement?" The officer's hands trembled. Over the controls. "Something is activating. Below the surface, deep underground." Then, without warning, the planet spoke. A transmission, ancient, crackling with distortion, cut through every frequency in the Xylar fleet. It was in an old human dialect, barely understandable. But the words, they were clear enough. "You are trespassing. Leave now. This is your only warning." The bridge fell into dead silence. Tsar felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. Captain Tsar had faced death many times before. He had battled in wars, commanded fleets against impossible odds, and survived encounters with some of the deadliest species in the galaxy. But nothing had ever made his blood run cold like that message from Earth, a voice from a planet that was supposed to be dead, a warning from a race that had vanished 500,000 years ago. Tsar clenched his jaw. "Can we trace the transmission's origin?" The communications officer, a wiry creature with glowing yellow eyes, scrambled through the data. "It's coming from deep underground, almost 100 kilometers below the surface, but the signal is encrypted, heavily encrypted. Even if we wanted to respond, our systems don't recognize the encoding format." "It's ancient." Tsar's claws tapped against his console. "Keep working on it." He turned to his tactical officer. "What do the scans say? Is there any biological activity on the surface?" The officer hesitated. "None, sir. No heat. Signatures, no oxygen-based life forms. It's completely sterile, but—" He swallowed. "We've detected something else. Massive structures beneath the crust. Some of them are still active." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Earth wasn't just protected by orbital defenses, it had fortifications underground. Tsar's mind reeled. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, revealing the probe's deep scans. At first, it just looked like layers of rock and abandoned ruins. But then, deeper than any known civilization should have existed, the readings became impossible. Gigantic metal vaults, cities beneath the Earth, power sources unlike anything in the Galactic Union's database, and something even more unsettling, thousands of stasis pods buried in underground bunkers. The science officer whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. "Captain, some of the pods are still powered." Tsar's heart pounded. He took a slow breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "Are they occupied?" The officer hesitated before nodding. "Yes, Captain. There are humans inside them." The bridge exploded into whispers of disbelief. The entire fleet had assumed humans were extinct, but the evidence was undeniable. They had been waiting. Tsar gritted his teeth. "If they're still alive, why haven't they woken up?" The science officer was already scanning deeper. I don't know, but the energy readings are off the charts. The entire planet is running on some kind of automated system. It's like something is maintaining it, keeping everything in standby mode. A terrifying realization hit Tsar like a thunderbolt. Humanity didn't disappear. They prepared. Whatever had happened 500,000 years ago, it wasn't extinction. It was hibernation. Tsar turned to his officers. "This is no ordinary graveyard. This planet is a sleeping giant, and we just woke it up." Then, for the second time that day, the fleet's alarms went off. "Captain," the communications officer cried out, "the human warships are moving." Tsar snapped his head toward the main screen. The massive human warships, sleek, dark, and impossibly advanced, were shifting in formation, and this time they weren't just watching, they were preparing to engage. Tsar barely had time to react before the largest human dreadnought sent a single message across all frequencies. "Final warning, leave now." Tsar's claws tightened around his command chair. He had to decide, run or stay and risk war with a race that should have been long dead. Captain Tsar's breath was slow and controlled, but his mind was racing. This was not the mission he had expected. The Galactic Union had sent him to investigate a dead planet, not to stumble into an awakening war machine from 500,000 years ago. The warning was clear: leave or suffer the consequences, but his instinct screamed at him that there was more to uncover. His crew waited for his command. Some of them looked ready to flee, their reptilian eyes darting nervously toward the massive human warships now aligning themselves into a perfect battle formation. Others, like his battle-hardened tactical officers, kept their hands near the weapon systems, ready for a fight they all knew they couldn't win. Xar had faced death before, but he wasn't a fool. If they engaged now, they wouldn't survive. "Send a message," he ordered. His voice was steady, though every fiber of his being told him to prepare for combat. The communications officer hesitated. What should we say?" Xar's jaw tightened. "Tell them we come in peace. We were only exploring." The message was sent. The bridge fell into silence as they waited for a response. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the lead human warship moved. It didn't fire, didn't charge, but its colossal engines flared to life, pushing it forward at a terrifying speed. The ship was massive, far larger than anything in the Galactic Union's fleet. The sheer force of its movement sent shockwaves rippling through the Xyla ship's sensors. Then a new transmission came through. This time, the voice was clearer, stronger, commanding. "You have 5 minutes to leave this system. Do not return." Xar exhaled sharply. His mind raced. He needed more time. "Deploy another probe," he ordered, "but this time send it down quietly. I want it to scan those underground bunkers again. We need to know what's waking up down there." His science officer hesitated. "Captain, if they detect it—" "I know the risk," Xar cut him off. "Do it." The second probe launched, darting toward Earth at a low trajectory, carefully avoiding detection. At the same time, the Xyla fleet subtly repositioned itself, moving slightly back but not fully retreating. Xar wasn't done yet. He needed to understand. The probe descended through the atmosphere, weaving past ancient debris and inactive satellites. As it approached the surface, it locked onto one of the underground vaults. Xar's claws dug into his chair. "Show me what's inside." The holographic display flickered as the data streamed in. Rows upon rows of stasis pods filled the cavernous vaults. Thousands, no, millions. And then one of them started opening. Xar's breath caught in his throat. A humanoid figure lay inside the pod, suspended in glowing blue light. Its features were unmistakable, a human. But there was something different. The being's eyes opened. The probe's transmission cut to static. On the bridge of Xar's ship, alarms blared once again. "Captain, the human fleet is charging weapons." Xar's blood ran cold. They had pushed too far. The humans were awake, and now they were done warning. The bridge was in chaos. Lights flickered, alarms wailed, and tension thickened the air like an invisible force. Captain Xar felt the weight of 1,000 decisions pressing against his mind. The human warships were no longer just watching. They were preparing to fire. "Captain, their energy readings are spiking. They're locking onto us," the tactical officer cried out. Xar's claws tightened around his command chair. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get as far away from Earth as possible. But his mind, sharp and battle-hardened, analyzed the situation with a ruthless focus. The humans could have destroyed them already. Their weapons had charged, but they hadn't fired, not yet, which meant one thing. "They're waiting," Xar muttered under his breath. The bridge fell silent as his officers turned to him in confusion. "Waiting?" his science officer asked hesitantly. "For what?" Tsar exhaled sharply. "For our reaction." This was a test, a final one. If the Xyla fleet so much as flinched the wrong way, the humans would strike without hesitation. "Hold position," Tsar commanded. Some of his officers visibly tensed at the order, their instincts screaming the same thing his did. "Run!" "But Captain, if we just sit here, we'll
die just as quickly if we try to flee," Tsar snapped.
These ships are faster than us, stronger than us, and we are deep inside their defensive range. If we panic, we're finished." A silence followed. The realization sank in. They were completely at the mercy of these ancient human war machines. Tsar turned to the communications officer. "Send another message." The officer hesitated. "What should we say?" Tsar's mind raced. The humans had made their position clear. Leave now, do not return. If they were to survive, they needed a reason to be spared. A wrong word, and it would be the end. He took a deep breath. "Transmit this. We acknowledge your warning, but we seek knowledge, not war. Humanity vanished from history, and the galaxy has long feared what became of you. If you will permit it, we only ask to understand your fate." The message was sent. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. The human warships remained in formation, weapons glowing, targeting systems locked onto every Xylar vessel. The sheer power radiating from them was staggering. Tsar knew what it meant to be outmatched. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution waiting to happen. Then finally, the lead human warship responded. A deep, controlled voice came through their speakers. Unlike the first warning, this transmission wasn't distorted. It was calm, steady. Your presence was unauthorized. Your curiosity nearly cost you your lives. Tsar swallowed hard. But it hasn't. Why? There was a brief pause. Then, because you chose to listen. Tsar glanced at his crew, who sat frozen, holding their breath. This was their chance. The voice continued. "One of ours has awakened. That is why we have returned." Tsar's mind snapped back to the probe's last transmission, the stasis pod opening, the human waking up. Everything was happening because of that moment. Tsar leaned forward. "Who is waking up?" A long silence followed. Then the human warship powered down its weapons. The others followed suit, though they remained positioned like silent sentinels, watching. Then the voice came again. "Prepare yourselves, alien. The old gods are returning." Tsar felt a chill run through his entire body. This wasn't just about waking up a few lost survivors. This was something much, much bigger. The bridge remained silent, save for the low hum of the ship's systems and the rhythmic beeping of sensor readouts. Every Xylar officer sat frozen, staring at the holographic display where the massive human warships hovered in formation. Captain Tsar felt his heart pounding against his ribs. The old gods are returning. Those words unsettled him more than the threat of destruction. The humans had referred to themselves as gods, not warriors, not an empire. It was a declaration of something far more terrifying than mere military power. Tsar took a slow breath. "Science officer, status on the probe?" The officer hesitated, his clawed fingers dancing over the console. The probe's feed cut off when the human inside the stasis pod awoke, but the readings before the blackout were
off the charts. Tsar's eyes narrowed. "Explain," the officer gulped. "Sir, the energy signatures weren't just from the pod itself. The entire underground facility reacted when the human woke up. It's as if something was waiting
for them. And now, a sudden surge of power rippled through the void of space. The ship's monitors flickered, struggling to process the immense energy spike coming from Earth itself. "Captain," the science officer gasped, "energy readings."
are increasing exponentially. Tsar whipped his head toward the main display.
Earth, once silent and cold, was awakening. Something massive was happening beneath the surface. Then, without warning, the ground split open. The probe's remaining automated sensors, still orbiting the planet, captured the impossible. Huge metallic structures emerged from beneath the surface, pushing through rock and soil like titanic monoliths. They were not ruins. They were pristine, untouched, and active. Their exteriors gleamed with an unnatural glow, pulsing with energies that should have decayed into dust eons ago. And then came the final horror. The stasis vault opened. Not just one pod, not just 100 millions. Tsar's claws dug into his chair as he stared in disbelief. One by one, humans stepped out of their pods, their bodies glowing faintly with the same energy that had awakened the warships. Their movements were unnatural. Not clumsy like creatures waking from centuries of slumber. They moved with purpose, as if they had never truly been asleep. Tsar's throat went dry. "How is this possible?" The science officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, the power readings, it's almost as if the planet itself was preserving them." Tsar's eyes widened. Earth hadn't just been a graveyard. It had been a cradle, a containment unit holding back something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. And now it was open. The lead human warship transmitted again. "You wished to understand our fate, alien? Now you shall witness it." Tsar's voice was barely steady. "What are you?" The response sent a shiver down every Xyla's spine. "We are what remains. We are what will come. We are the architects of the next age." The slumber has ended. Tsar's mind reeled. This was not just the return of an ancient species. This was an ascension, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Tsar's mind churned with 1,000 unanswered questions, but his instincts screamed only one thing: leave. Now, before it's too late. The humans weren't just waking up. They had planned this. The vast underground stasis vaults continued to open, releasing millions of humans into the unknown depths of their planet. The probe's final transmission showed them marching in perfect synchronization, as if they had been trained in their sleep. Their eyes glowed faintly with an eerie electric blue light, something unnatural, something beyond Xylar comprehension. And then the ground beneath them shifted. Massive metallic platforms rose to the surface, revealing what could only be described
as launch zones. Tsar clenched his jaw. They weren't just waking up. They were mobilizing. "Captain," the science officer whispered, his scales paling, I think we just witnessed the activation of a planetary military force."
Tsar didn't respond. He couldn't, because at that exact moment the human warships began moving. One by one they left Earth's orbit, aligning into a formation more organized and more precise than anything in Galactic Union history. Tsar's claws tapped rapidly against his chair. "They're leaving the planet," an officer confirmed. His voice trembled. "They're deploying."
Tsar's heart sank. Where were they going, and who was their target? The lead human warship sent one last transmission. Your time of dominion is over. The long night has ended. We return now to claim what was always ours. Zar's stomach
twisted. This wasn't just an awakening, it was a reclamation, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Zar's eyes remained fixed on the holographic display as the human war fleet advanced into deep space. Their movements were deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. The Xylar fleet remained frozen, unwilling to move, unwilling to even breathe too loudly. Any action, even the wrong transmission frequency, might be taken as a threat. "Captain," the tactical officer whispered, voice shaking. "The human ships, they're spreading out, moving toward multiple jump points." Zar's heart pounded. They weren't just leaving Earth, they were heading for the wider galaxy. The humans hadn't awakened into a confused, fractured race. No, they had woken up with a plan. Zar's mind raced. Where had they been for 500,000 years?
Why now? What had they been waiting for? Then the communications officer gasped. "Captain, we're picking up another transmission." Zar's claws gripped his chair. "From the humans?" The officer shook his head. "No, from the Galactic Union."
"High Command." A new message flashed across the holographic screen. "Priority alert to all Galactic Union vessels. Unknown fleet detected mobilizing from Sol system. All available military forces are to regroup at designated defensive positions. Stand by for further orders." Zar's blood went cold. They had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Union had seen the human fleet move and assumed they were just another unknown threat. But Zar knew better. This wasn't a new fleet. This was an old one, the first one. The original rulers of war and strategy had returned, and the rest of the galaxy was still playing catch-up. Zar swallowed hard. There was nothing in the universe that could prepare them for what was about to happen. For 500,000 years, aliens had assumed the humans were gone. But now they would learn the truth. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had been waiting, and now they were taking it all back.